I am, in a way, an experiment. I've been born and raised in a family of contemporary artists who have never taught me how to draw correctly. Growing up, I would often hear the quote of Pablo Picasso: "It took me 4 years to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a child." I was spared the necessity of going through this professional stage, and I was given an opportunity to grow gradually from a child into an artist, if of course I would still want to be a visual artist as a grown-up. At the beginning of my life, my drawings were rarely liked by people outside of my family, and I think that it made me more independent in my artistic expressions. I had to separate the process of creating visual art, which I liked for its own sake, from the attempts of getting any admiration for it. Opinions of other people about my art weren't contributing too much to my inspiration. Things that were, however, were my desire to use drawing as a language of visual storytelling, much like with cave people, or my curiosity about experimenting with different techniques and materials. For example, what can be done with an old newspaper, ugly transparent glue, and some cardboard, colored cardboard, or for example with a roll of violet toilet paper and some water. But I was the most inspired by the idea of creating some visual objects that would look pretty and also have some story or some deeper concept behind them. That's approximately how I spent the first 12 years of my life in terms of visual art. As it often happens, entering the teenage years put an end to it. I think that many teenagers, most teenagers, feel like they can't afford to draw like children anymore, and they give it up and never go back to this activity. For me, this pause lasted for about 4 years, although I never fully returned to visual arts until my second year of university. Most of my high school years I spent focusing on music and even more on writing, and when in my very late teens I would start drawing again, I think it probably looked like I picked it up where I left off. Throughout my university years I've tried a couple of techniques and themes for my visual art. I've tried drawing with a ballpoint pen, with a gel pen, with acrylic markers. I tried painting with acrylic paint. I have experimented with digitization of my drawings and with making animation. I mostly drew people, sometimes still lifes. Then I moved on to making digital portraits of my friends, and then by the age of 27, where I am now, I've came to mostly making the portrait, or drawing the portraits of my characters, who are vaguely inspired by real people. So looking back on this story, I can say that I do believe that in visual arts, just like in music and in writing, these 3 sides of inspiration, knowing what to do, feeling how to do it, and having a desire to do it at the moment, are as much relevant. However, I feel like in visual art it is more prominent that the second component of inspiration is the most important, though I will still start with the first. So what you draw or what you paint is important. However, I feel like it is mostly important for you and for your own personal inspiration than it is to your final audience. I only draw things that I care about. I usually draw people or characters that are also people, and I only draw people that I care about deeply. That's why I feel inspired when I do so. But I understand that no bad painting can be justified by its theme, so the question of how remains the most important in visual arts. And I think that, as far as I understand it, the answer to this question can be found in the history of art. All artists existed in a context. You can say that all artists were inspired by something, by some other art. Van Gogh was inspired by ukiyo-e, Japanese prince, and artists of early Renaissance were inspired by the art of ancient Greece and Rome. So we can also look at the history of art and first understand the context and then find out what do we like the most and let somebody else's art inspire us. I never studied history of art very deeply and on purpose except for one semester in university, but I think that growing up surrounded by art somehow influenced my taste and the way I feel art. However, I feel like for my personal visual art, the most inspiration I've taken from Disney films and classic animation. I did write a master's paper on Disney princesses after all, so I love drawing princesses. I've always drawn them. I draw them now and I see no reason to stop. So yes, I think that the answer to this question of how has these two sides. First, understanding the general context of art, and second, understanding what do you personally like the most and with what art would you like to have a dialogue. When it comes to the desire to create visual art, I would say that for me this desire comes from my desire for some visual art to be created. I see no other way to word it, because you can just want something to exist and then you can do this, and I think that this is enough for my own inspiration, usually for creating visual art. And also I would like to say this, I often hear it from grown-up people, from many grown-up people, and by that I mean those who are over the age of 13, who say that they aren't talented, therefore they don't even try to draw at their age. And by not talented, they usually say that they aren't capable of drawing realistically, that they don't meet these pretty old requirements for artists. Photo camera exists for more than 100 years now, so we don't have to work as photo cameras anymore. Art is not about realism, it's not about the skill of drawing something correctly, realistically and neatly. Art is about freedom and courage and honesty. It's about this passion for the search of beauty and paradoxes in what you see. Visual art is actually about discovering and exploring the way this world works. It's a language which I think all artists of all kinds have to be at least a little bit fluent in. I don't have any serious ambitions about visual arts. I have participated in a couple of exhibitions, but I don't take it too seriously. I am a musician first and also I'm a writer. However, I understand that neither my music nor my writing would have been the same, and they probably would have been worse if I weren't exploring also the visual side of art. So if you don't draw, and if the only reason why you don't even want to try is your inability to draw correctly and realistically, then maybe you would want to look at it from a different angle. I'm very thankful to my family for giving me this understanding of art, because otherwise I would have given it up the minute I failed to draw something correctly. And it would have been very sad, because having this lifelong hobby, having this third passion, had been very rewarding for me throughout my whole life as an artist. Visual art has to be for everyone who has this honest passion for the search of beauty and the discovery of the mysteries of the visual world, and not just for children and professional artists.